Welcome, friend. Settle in, make yourself comfortable. Perhaps a warm blanket, a soft pillow, and a gentle light just beyond the corner of the room. Tonight, we will walk slowly through an old story, one carved in stone and whispered in the halls of an empire that once spread its hands across many lands. If you enjoy these quiet journeys through time, a small invitation. If you feel moved, please press subscribe, softly, like closing a book, and leave a quiet line in the comments about which story you'd like to hear next. Your gentle interest helps these tales find new ears who need calm nights. Now, breathe slowly and let the world dim at the edges. Tonight's tale is of a man named Darius, a king who rose from uncertain beginnings, who ruled wide horizons, and who made sure that his story would be read by the wind and by later ages. He lived in a time when words were held in stone, and memory was carried in great buildings. Listen, and imagine the cool of a palace courtyard at dusk, the hush of distant servants, and the soft echo of footsteps on carved stone. In the years that stretched across the late 6th and early 5th centuries before the sun and moon kept the same calendars we use now, there stood a realm of many tongues and many hills. It was a place stitched together from deserts, river valleys, island coasts, and high plateaus. In that vast quilt of lands, small towns and great cities alike turned their faces toward a court that sat like a quiet heartbeat in the middle of many roads. Among the proud families of the Persians, there was a house known for its steady hands and patient heads. From that house came a son named Darius. He was not at first a thunderbolt of fame. He was, in many stories, someone who learned the ways of courts and soldiers, who watched how orders moved through men, and how the smallest word could bend a plan. His life would become a bridge between the private rhythms of a family and the vast mechanics of empire. Imagine a boy growing into a man beneath the shadow of caravans and the distant laughter of markets, learning how names traveled, who owed what tribute, who kept peace, how a letter sealed with wax could change a life. Later, that man would hold a title that carried the weight of many crowns. He would be remembered as Darius the Great, ruler from 522 until 486 BCE, a reign that stretched for decades and reached many corners of the known world. But before the title, before the monuments, there were days of question and uneasy nights. Stories, some told by friends, some told by rivals, speak of pretenders, of sudden deaths, of the fragile architecture of kingship. And so Darius's story begins not as a simple ascent, but as a careful claiming of what he believed to be rightfully his, a right that he would later write in stone for all who followed. He had learned early that power arrived in small parcels. In one telling, Darius had been a young officer, a spearman beside kings and generals, carrying neither the gold of a crown nor the ease of a throne. He watched campaigns move like lines of a slow river, soldiers crossing ground, envoys arriving with sealed messages, satraps returning to their provinces with ledgers and complaints. The empire he would one day shape was not a single face, It was a mosaic of languages, local customs, and distant governors called satraps, each a small court beneath the great king. In the hush of evenings, when tents were quiet and embers glowed low, Darius thought often about order. He liked the idea that a single inked line on a tablet could arrange taxes, that a spoken instruction could open channels of grain and metal from one province to another. He saw that when places were counted and measured, when tribute and law were made steady, the small, frightened people in far towns could rest more easily. The peace of many villages depended on the steadiness of those unseen systems, roads, coin, and the cadence of delivery. Long before stones bore his name, he practiced steadiness. He spoke in a measured voice. He observed how leaders listened and how men obeyed. If a problem came, he would sit and circle the causes like one tracing the rim of a cup with a finger, patient until a pattern emerged. Those who later served under him remembered the careful manner of his decisions, how the king's voice would not cut like a sudden wind, but would fall like a quiet curtain, settling things into place. The time came when the world slid into trouble. Crowns had become contestable, and rumors moved faster than loyalty. Some rulers died. Some were replaced in ways that made the sky seem darker for those who depended on order. In that uneasy season, Darius took action. With the help of nobles and soldiers who believed in him, he moved to remove a pretender and to secure the throne. It was not an easy path. It was carved with swift decisions and cold nights where men whispered of fate. To make his claim firm, Darius left one of the clearest traces any ruler can make, a voice written in 3 tongues upon a cliff face, a proclamation that told his side of the story. This enormous text, the Behistun inscription, was both autobiography and declaration, a record of lineage, of deeds, and of the gods who, he claimed, had given him his right. There, high upon the rock, his relief and his words spoke across generations, saying that he was king, and explaining the troubles that had led to his rule. For scholars and for listeners alike, the inscription remains a key window into what a ruler wished the future to remember. There is a touch of human drama in that rock. The king who carved it wanted certainty. He wanted the anxious subjects in far provinces to know the reason for their new king, to understand that order would return, that taxes and roads and the calm of trade would be steadied. But it was also an act of courage, to stand and say in stone, this is what happened, when rival tongues might tell a different tale. As the sun set over the cliffs where the Behistun words stand, imagine Darius watching the light move across letters that would outlast him. He wrote of battles put down, of rebels who had been captured, and of the gods who had guided him. To many who heard the story in a quiet court, the stone felt like both a shield and a promise.
Once the immediate revolts were firmed and the shape of rule settled, Darius turned to the slow, steady work that makes an empire more than a collection of conquests. He reorganized. He divided the world he ruled into provinces, each watched over by a satrap, governors who collected tribute and kept watch over local business. These satrapies were not meant to be chains, but a structure that could hold a complex mosaic together. The counting of tribute, the setting of fixed payments, and the appointment of loyal governors created a rhythm. Each year, the empire would hum with the predictable movement of goods and silver. Money itself was made steadier. A new coin, the daric, became a trusted measure, gold that could travel across borders and be understood in towns from the Indus to the Aegean. With a reliable coin, trade grew calm and wider. Markets could speak a common language, and merchants could trust what they were paid. For Darius, this was not merely convenience, it was a thread that wove disparate peoples together. He built, too, from great halls that would later be called Persepolis, to the palaces in Susa, stone and timber rose in patterns of strength and beauty. Great columns, reliefs of processions, and storehouses for tribute marked the landscape. But these were not only displays of wealth, they were reminders of an order, of a system in which craftsmen in distant provinces could see their goods counted and used. In cool courtyards, the noise of daily life softened into the background of careful administration. Between his building projects and reforms, the king sent letters and tablets that recorded what had been done. Foundation inscriptions, tablets placed in the lying bones of buildings, told of his intentions and the limits of his reach. These actions made the realm feel like a living thing, composed of many parts that moved reliably together. Scholars who read these traces today call his reign a period when the Achaemenid state found structural shape and its reach was felt across vast territories.
Take a breath now. Imagine standing in a quiet hall within one of those palaces. A gentle lantern, a servant's soft tread far away, the scent of oil and cedar. Think of how small acts, a coin given in the market, a road mended, a tax ledger marked in ink, ripple outward to ease the nights of ordinary people. This is the quieter work of kings and of those who follow their laws, a slow tending rather than thunder.
Even the most careful hands find resistance. Here and there, provinces rose in anger. Egypt's, Babylonia, and other regions carried traditions of their own. They sometimes chafed under central rule. Darius marched and sent governors to settle revolts, reasserting the bonds of tribute and law. His was a reign of many military movements, each one a note in the long hymn of keeping the empire balanced. Beyond these internal challenges lay the far-off islands and city-states by the sea. In the west, across the Aegean, cities of Greek speech had stirred. Revolts along the Ionian coast, where Greek colonists sought more freedom, would eventually call for a larger response. In one sequence, Darius dispatched fleets and armies to punish rebellion and to collect submission. Those campaigns reached into Greek lands and islands, and their stories would ripple through history. One of the better-known echoes from those campaigns touched a plain called Marathon. In the year 490 BCE, a Persian expedition, sent as part of the king's intention to punish and to teach a lesson, met the Athenian forces. The clash there, the Battle of Marathon, became a remembered moment, a shock that reminded the empire that distance and local determination could be fierce things. Darius, who intended to lead future expeditions personally, began preparations for a larger loyal campaign. But life's small and large interruptions, an Egyptian revolt and failing health, meant that his plans to cross again were never fully realized in his lifetime. He died in 486 BCE as he tended the cares of empire.
When the clamor of banners and the cadence of governors settled into the slow breathing of years, what remained were the works and the words, the carved lines of Behistan and the rising columns of Persepolis told a story that reached beyond the immediate years. They told of a mode of rule that respected difference and tried to order the many into a functioning whole. Darius's reforms, his satrapal system, his coinage, and his building projects shaped how many peoples lived their everyday lives. Traders who would measure wealth by darics, farmers whose lands were recorded for tax, sculptors and carvers whose hands softened stone into shapes that would speak for ages. To one generation he was a firm hand, to another he was a distant lawgiver. The stones he chose to leave were both a claim and an offering to memory. And quietly, as night settles over ruins and over modern cities that trace their roots back to those times, his name remains in the stones and in the stories. A traveler standing by a column in Persepolis might feel the cool whisper of history. A reader opening an old tablet might find a sentence that once steadied a market or smoothed a tax year. These quiet traces are a kind of benediction, the memory of order wrapped into architecture and clay.
Now, let us fold this long evening back into the present. Think of the roads Darius helped steady, not as long lists of tribute, but as pathways where a caravan's lantern once bobbed, and where a mother in a small town heard the soft creak of cartwheels and knew food would arrive. Consider that sometimes power is exercised with loud voice and sword, and other times with long work, counting, measuring, and making sure the year's grain is stored and shared. As you listen, picture a single carved line of text upon a high rock. Let the rhythm of the words slow your breath. The king who carved those lines wanted the future to remember steadiness. Tonight, perhaps you can let that steadiness enter your own breath. Your heartbeat is a small, trustworthy drum. Let it slow now, step by step. Thank you for joining this quiet walk through history. If you found comfort in this hour, perhaps you will come again for another slow story. If a particular tale calls to you, a forgotten queen, a stormy hero, or a gentle inventor, whisper it in the comments below. Subscribe gently to help these stories find other ears that need a calm night.
If you enjoyed this journey, please consider subscribing. A small, quiet click that helps keep these stories alive. Leave a short note below with the next story you'd like to hear. Sleep well, friend. May your dreams be full of gentle roads and quiet stone. Good night.